Tonight at 9, widespread damage, a deadly storm system from southern and central states continuing to make its way through the DMV. We're also monitoring damage done here at home and tracking the impact.
And we are not done with the threat of severe storms on this Sunday night yet. We'll have the latest on where these storms are heading over the next few hours.
Officer hit by an ATV, the latest on their condition as police look for a suspect who drove off along a busy nightlife corridor. Changes to the classroom. Could Virginia students be hit from cuts at the U.S. Department of Education? The arguments for and against the issue. And tax season savings, the expert advice to avoid issues with the IRS. We're stretching your dollar.
You're watching the station covering all of the DMV. This is DC News Now.
Good Sunday evening. Thank you for joining us for DC News Now at 9 o'clock. I'm Ben Dennis. Happening now, calls for trees and wires down at the DMV. A tree fell on this BMW today because of high wind gusts along 44th Street in Northwest. For that, toss it right over to meteorologist Damon Matson. He is in for Scott Sumner this Sunday evening. Damon, it's relatively quiet in DC, but a lot of the wind and heavy activity off to the west right now.
Right, Ben, and that activity is going to slowly work toward the district here over the next couple of hours. Some of that damage you just saw to the trees being knocked down onto cars close to the district, that didn't even have anything to do with the severe thunderstorms just west of us. So it's been very, very windy, very, very active across the region. But we're watching this main line of activity, a long stretch of strong to severe thunderstorms working now east of the I-81 corridor. It's quiet still around the district and I-95. But this activity is quickly going to make its way east over the next couple of hours. And we have had multiple severe thunderstorm warnings with this activity. One active one at this moment is in Frederick County, Maryland. This warning goes until 9:15. This nasty cell right here has a history of producing torrential rain, large hail, frequent lightning, and wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. Look at these pink and black colors even right along the Route 15 corridor north of Frederick. That's likely a little bit of hail coming down just south of Thurmont, just off to the west of Walkersville. Frederick City proper is getting hit by the southern edge of this storm, and there is that history. All of this pink and black color stretching back toward Berryville, Charlestown, up into Middletown, Maryland there. That is the history of hail this cell has in producing quarter-sized hail at times. We've had 2 reports of that coming out of Charlestown and Berryville, so definitely a nasty part of this thunderstorm line. Now, as we look off to the south, no additional warnings as of yet, but we have additional heavy thunderstorms stretching across Clark County down into I-66 just east of Front Royal, and then down even farther towards central Virginia. And all of this activity is slowly making its way off to the east toward DC. And again, some locations back into West Virginia have picked up 2+ inches of rain as these storms are hitting some of the same areas. So we have that threat for the heavy rain, hail, damaging wind gusts as we continue into the night. So we'll give you the latest on how much longer this severe threat will last across the DMV coming up here in just a bit.
Stick it out indoors, Damon. Thank you. New tonight, we have a report live in the field of some of the aftermath at home. We will be tracking it throughout the night. Down trees, power outages as well, including in Montgomery County. Our Dave Laval joins us live in Rockville right now, where homes have lost their power after high winds. Dave, what can you tell us right now?
This Pepco crew along a section of Georgia Avenue is working to restore the power as quickly as possible. The utility company reports 46 outages around its service area, affecting just over 1,000 people. Let's go ahead and show you one of the problems facing Pepco today. Strong winds knocked down a tree along a section of River Road in Potomac Village, Maryland, late this afternoon. The tree also brought down power lines as it landed on the roof of a car. That seriously injured the driver, who was the only person in it at the time. Last report had him recovering at the hospital. The road reopened to traffic about 2 hours later. There have been various reports of fallen trees and downed power lines around Montgomery County and Washington, D.C. We'll show you some of those later in our newscast. But just to recap, Pepco reports 46 outages around its service area, affecting just over 1,000 customers. We are live in Rockville, Maryland. Dave Laval, DC News Now.
Our thanks to Dave. More local news in Southeast DC. Police say that a man was shot and killed this morning. We're told this happened just before 3:30 on Chaplin Street near Davis Elementary School. First responders took the man to the hospital. We're told they tried to save his life before he died. No word on any suspect. Also new, a man is recovering after being stabbed just after midnight earlier this morning in Southeast. It happened on F Street near Fletcher Johnson Middle School. The victim was reportedly cut on their arm. They are expected to be all right. Police also do not have any suspect named. All right, we have an update tonight. The police officer hit by the ATV driver last night on U Street in Northwest DC. Well, good news. The officer has been released from the hospital. Police say this happened on 15th and U, that busy nightlife corridor, around 8 p.m. yesterday. The driver of that ATV, they kept going. Right now, police are looking for a blue and black ATV. They believe the suspect is a man with large build. If you have any information, you're asked to contact police. And staying in D.C., a Tesla was vandalized this week in Northeast. Police are looking for the suspect on your screen. According to the police report that we've obtained, that vehicle was targeted on G Street, not far from Union Station. Police say they found the Tesla with a message on the front windshield saying, quote, "Go Doge. I support the killing of the Department of Education." Of course, Elon Musk is the Doge head and owns Tesla as well. If you have any information about the suspect, you're asked to reach out to police. And new tonight in Maryland, it's a bizarre case here. State police say that they found a man with stab wounds on I-270 at Georgetown Road in Bethesda around 10 this morning. Police say they first got reports of a vehicle in the road. Once they got there, they found the man who was suffering from those stab wounds. No word yet, though, what led up to the incident. Broke to you a year and a half ago. You may remember in November of 2023, 3 people were arrested and charged for operating what police say was a high-end brothel out of Tyson's Corner and in Massachusetts. While we still don't know the identities of who bought sex through the trafficking ring here in Virginia, video here shows the buildings allegedly involved in Tyson's. We are now learning the identities of the first round of accused clients in Massachusetts. In court there Friday, we learned the backgrounds of 12 men, range from a dentist, software engineer, and an employee of a pharmaceutical giant, according to the Boston Globe. Still no word if or when anyone accused in Virginia may be identified. Turning to that escalating trade war, President Trump is now threatening a 200% tariff on European alcohol to counter the EU's tariff on American whiskey, which was in response to earlier Trump tariffs. Essentially, the tax could turn a $25 imported bottle of champagne into $75. Our Tim Reed heard from store owners and customers in Prince George's County.
I spoke to the owner of this wine and spirit store in Bowie. He did not want to comment on camera, but many of his customers are upset and concerned and are hoping the president will have a change of heart.
I do not expect him to change his mind. I think that the things that he's doing right now, or the things that he's threatening to do, are the things that he has all the intentions on doing.
Wine customer Aaron Morris heard about the plan from the White House to slap a 200% tariff on European wine and spirits. Morris says that is not a good idea and will hurt consumers and business owners.
I mean, I think it's a travesty, man. I think that the fact that, you have people like Sam that's been in this community for a long time and has provided us with the spirits that if you didn't take them.
To put the plan into perspective, for example, untariffed $15 bottles of some imported wine could possibly increase the price to $45.
I can see where he wants to help the American economy, but where it's hurting some certain individuals, I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I think it's a bad thing. I mean, $15 wine, he jumped to $45 on wine. That's, people ain't gonna be able to afford that in the economy because everything is going the other way.
The Trump administration says long-term, the taxes on imported goods will boost the U.S. economy, but EU officials say this is a lose-lose. In Bowie, Maryland, Tim Reed, DC News Now.
Well, thanks to Tim. All right, budget cuts to the U.S. Department of Education could have Virginia students paying the price. The Trump administration is making good on a campaign promise to dismantle the Department of Education. Data shows the Commonwealth gets about $2.6 billion a year in federal funding for its schools. Some congressional leaders say losing that cash would be a huge hit for students with disabilities, low-income families, and college students with Pell Grants. But lawmakers who back President Trump's efforts say closing the education department will mean more money for schools because it could be streamlined, given directly to states.
A lot of first-generation students, at-risk students, students in poverty, those programs make sure first they have what they need to get to college and to succeed.
We found that about 60 to 65 cents of every dollar is wasted on administrative processing at the Department of Education.
While the president can attempt to gut the agency, it would take an act of Congress to fully get rid of the Department of Education. Meantime, the Department of Ed firing half of its staff, 50%, in what it calls a, quote, final mission, but also closing its headquarters and regional offices just this week for, quote, security reasons. For local districts, they worry the slashing of the agency will hurt students the most. Daniel Hamburg has more from the head of the Fairfax County Teachers Union.
The concern is the kids who need the most assistance won't get it. Now, when we're talking about overall school funding, the federal contribution only accounts for a small fraction of it, but for those low income and special education students, it's vital. Massive cuts at the U.S. Department of Education are being felt by educators.
My initial reaction is just being appalled.
David Walrod, the president of the Fairfax County Federation of Teachers, says one of the key functions of DOE is oversight, making sure civil rights laws are followed.
Fairfax County Public Schools during the pandemic was not providing the service that they needed to our students with disabilities, and the Federal Department of Education were the ones that stepped in and made sure that those families got what they needed.
The DOE's civil rights branch is losing nearly half its staff, although officials insisted the cuts will not affect civil rights investigations. They describe the reductions as strategic decisions.
Right now, Secretary McMahon is trying to say that no functions are going to be dropped. It's going to be business as usual. But how in the world can business as usual maintain when you cut half of the folks that are doing the work?
On a statewide level, Senator Stella Pekarsky says Virginia has invested record amounts in K-12 and higher education. $2.6 billion of federal funding represents about 11% of the budget.
The state cannot take over what the federal government has in place. This is going to have a massive impact on our ability to provide the best education to students at the end of the day.
The Department of Education's headquarters in D.C. and its offices around the country were closed today for security reasons, we're told. Those will reopen tomorrow with the staff they still have. Advocates here in Fairfax County say they will be watching closely to see what happens. In Fairfax County, Daniel Hamburg, DC News Now.
Our thanks to Daniel. Just 4 days away from the official start of spring, we have an update on DC's cherry blossoms, a status update. They are set to have a peak bloom between March 28th and 31st. Look at this. The National Park Service says the blossoms are in the second of 6 stages. And by the time peak bloom rolls around, they predict 70% of the cherry blossoms will be open.